We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. 19-year-old Nicholas Prosper, who murdered 3 members of his immediate family and planned a school killing the following morning, has been told he'll spend at least 49 years in prison. Moscow and Kyiv blame each other for breaching a proposed partial ceasefire, while Donald Trump says he and President Zelensky had what was described as a positive discussion on a frontline ceasefire. And the Tour de France will start in Edinburgh in 2027, and England, Scotland and Wales will share 6 stages in the men's and women's races. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the journalist and broadcaster, Daisy McAndrew. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Stopped on massacre mission. The Metro leads with the 49-year jail sentence for killer Nicholas Prosper, who shot dead 3 members of his own family and was on his way to commit mass murder at a local school when he was apprehended. The Express says the sentencing judge ordered Prosper to appear in court personally after he had initially refused. The Guardian says that next week's spring statement will include the biggest spending cuts since the era of austerity, as the Chancellor struggles to plug a huge budget deficit. The Eye reports that while no new tax rises are likely, there will be more cuts to the benefits budget coming up soon. As efforts continue to get a ceasefire in Ukraine, The Times says President Trump has his eye on acquiring Ukraine's atomic power plants, as well as getting access to the country's mineral wealth. Kevin's paper, The Mirror, features former Health Secretary Matt Hancock unrepentant at the COVID-19 inquiry over claims that friends of top Tories were apparently fast-tracked into getting huge contracts to provide the government with PPE equipment. The Telegraph says that because Labour is not forcing police to record criminals' biological data, they're now free to pick their own gender. The study report behind that story is also top story in the Daily Mail. The Financial Times says growth forecasts for the US have been cut because Donald Trump's use of trade tariffs against other countries has cast a shadow over the economy. The Sun leads with the court case of a casualty TV star who crashed her car and seriously injured a nurse while high on cocaine. And finally, a cute story in The Star showing dolphins dancing around the space capsule that returned 2 astronauts to Earth after 9 months stranded on the International Space Station. The headline, "What a flippering fab welcome home." I managed to say it. Bit of a tongue twister there. We're joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Daisy McAndrew to take us through the newspapers. Good to see you both. We start, I'm afraid, with the grim story that we've been leading with on Sky News at 10. The headline there, evil family killer forced to hear his fate. And this is Prosper, 19-year-old Prosper, who was sentenced today for the killing of 3 members of his own family.
I mean, I think it is such a good thing that he was forced by the judge to come to court to face up to what she had to say. So Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb had to delay the sentencing and force him, or get him to be forced to come to the court. And I think in the words she was saying, it was also really notable that she was saying, your family who you killed, your mother and your 2 siblings, with their deaths, probably prevented a huge number of other deaths, and that they should be remembered and the community should be remembering them and having them in their thoughts, which I thought was really lovely, because so often with these cases, you know, the criminal in the, you know, this horrendous evil person is the one we're all talking about for obvious reasons, but you forget the victims somehow in that, and I thought that was really well said that she did that.
And Kevin, the police in their statements as well today made a point of not wanting to name him because it was that notoriety that he so craved, and they desperately wanted to deny him of it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think it was a mistake, though, in the police statement, because, look, he has been convicted. He's been found guilty of 3 murders. I think it's quite right. Sky News, you've been reporting his name. His name is on the front of newspapers. He's there in the picture. You can't escape it. You mustn't glorify him, but you can't ignore his name and who he is to tell the story. But there's lots of angles of being thrown at lots of issues. But
yeah,
you're right, they have picked up. It's become a public area of concern about criminals found guilty of really serious crimes, manslaughter, murder, not turning up in court, refusing to leave their cells. And it's worked with a 19-year-old who's been persuaded to go. Others, it hasn't worked. Of course, judges have some discretion now on forcing them in, but they don't want disorder in the court. If you're going to have somebody sitting there shouting, laughing, smirking, or whatever, doing V signs at victims' families, it would not work. And this government, like the last government, is going, and Daily Mirror campaigned on this, is going to give judges the ability to add sentences if criminals convicted don't go into court. But an extra year would not really, if you've got 49 years minimum, would probably not influence you. Maybe if the powers were, you're not going to get visitors for a year or 2 years, that might have an impact, but it may not as well. It's a very difficult area. It's quite easy to say you must be in court, but do you really want people bound and gagged and chained?
Yeah,
because that's the thing, because you would have
kicking
to
and screaming,
physically
literally
drag them to court.
But you know, she's succeeded here, and I think it was quite right, and you know, she's getting plaudits for it, the judge, and deservedly so.
The Telegraph, moving on to the discussion of gun laws being tightened in the wake of this horrendous killing, because he obtained the firearm with a forged licence, being a 19-year-old as well, very easily obtained, it seems.
Yeah. And because this was one of the first questions, how on earth did he get his hands apparently legally on a gun? And of course it turned out it was illegal, because you said he had forged the document, but he had gone to huge lengths to forge it to such a degree that it was plausible and believable. And so, of course, the person who sold him the gun, thinking it was a lawful exchange, wasn't able to notify the police that this kid had, wrongly, illegally obtained a gun, partly because you have 7 days. He only obtained it just before. You have 7 days in order to inform the police that a gun has changed hands, and they weren't able to realise that he'd forged it. But now it does seem that the police and Yvette Cooper are saying we need to tighten up these laws. But I mean, whether that means having some sort of biometric or something more sophisticated than a piece of paper, which I would have thought it was already more sophisticated than that, but it's not.
If you have prior notice, it can be checked on a database who actually does legitimately have a firearms licence. That's not to say somebody could pose as somebody who they are not. And of course, the law is always going to have to be chasing after criminals, because they will come up with ever more ingenious, devious ways of getting around it.
And most criminals don't have licences anyway. They don't bother with them.
No, that's right. They'll just get them unlawfully. But he went. I mean, I just think the person who sold the firearm must be feeling absolutely terrible at what happened. They were conned. But I can see why prior approval should be required before a gun changes hands. It's not like buying somebody's old TV or even a car, is it? It's a gun, and the tighter the gun controls are, the fewer people will be killed with guns. I remember post-Dunblane, the ban on handguns.
Exactly. Although we have a lot of people saying that some of these laws tend to be knee-jerk and not properly thought through.
Yeah, I thought Dunblane, there was a number of people who were killed. There was nothing knee-jerk about that. All those kids,
One of the suggestions in the article is that gun sellers will have to inform police before they actually hand over the firearm.
Yes, they delay it.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's a central database or whether each police force has its own database, and if they are all separate, let's merge them.
Yeah.
So it can all be checked very, very quickly.
My understanding is they are all separate by police, force by force.
Well, it's time to put them together.
Yeah, I would agree.
To the Mirror front page, I don't know if you can link at all, but this is a comment from Gareth Southgate about, the example that young men have to be set. We have to show our young men that character matters, not money or status.
Well, Nicholas Prosper was looking at terrible stuff on the net in terms of child abuse, horrific violence. We've seen Andrew Tate is featured in convictions recently of the misogynist, people being whipped up by him. And I think Gareth Southgate, when he was England manager, he wrote that fantastic letter, Dear England, what patriotism means to him and should mean to us now, he did before the Euros last time around. And I think he's right. There's this toxic masculinity that's taken hold with some people. And it's got to be broken. Like, it's not cool, it's not big, it's not good. Would you really want to be that man now?
I think there are so many elements that are relevant. Obviously, Gareth Southgate talking about toxic masculinity, talking about incel culture, talking about gangs, but particularly social media, the influence of influencers on social media on vulnerable boys, and the fact that there's this report out, Centre for Social Justice, saying that boys are lagging behind girls on every single metric, whether it's academic, whether it's employment, boys not in education or in the workforce are up 40% since the pandemic. Male suicides are up, and all of these issues are feeding into a sense that boys aren't being looked after, aren't being understood, and are looking for role models in the wrong places. They either want notoriety from being criminals or murderers, or they feeding into this 80-20 idea that girls aren't interested in most boys and that they should be, and that life's unfair and that they have to rebel against it. And I think all of these issues, weirdly, in the UK, we seem to be doing worse than the rest of the Western world on these issues. And many people like Gareth Southgate saying it's lack of role models, it's lack of father figures, something has to change. And we all as a society need to realise that there's an issue there and that boys are in big trouble.
Or we all suffer. Yeah, that's why it's good.
It certainly is a problem. How to deal with it is the question. Yes. Kevin, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, this story on the front of the Telegraph, reporting that France is set to hand citizens a guide on what to do if it's invaded. Serious story. Stay with us.
The only way into Gaza for us right now is with the Israeli military. The IDF had brought us in to show us a tunnel network under a residential neighbourhood.
The length of time it must have to have created these tunnels must have taken years.
At the end of the day, it's war at the top. It's war down here.
I'm Alistair Bunkle, Sky's Middle East correspondent based here in Jerusalem.
As we were filming, there was a gun battle in the next street.
This neighbourhood, the Israeli military say, was the stronghold of Hamas's Rafah brigade.
It was just after 6:30 a.m. when the first shots were fired.
I remember everything. It was a day that I don't think I'll ever be able to forget.
There's no moon, perfect conditions for smugglers and human traffickers trying to move fuel, weapons and people.
The valleys in between, they're some of the main smuggling routes.
After days of negotiation, a major smuggler here has agreed to meet us.
The families that we've spoken to of people who have died trying to cross into Europe, they say you're a murderer. Are you a murderer?
No. Sky News. Get the full story
first.
Begum was 15 when she left East London with 2 school friends to join Islamic State in Syria.
Do you feel that you have committed a crime to the extent that you should serve time in a British prison?
I mean, I feel like the only crime I committed was coming here.
If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. I can take the heat. The second thing that Harry Truman said, was in politics, if you want a friend, get a dog.
My children will love a dog.
In Tel Aviv, a constant streak of interceptions filled the night sky as waves of missiles came in.
It appears to be a very, very large and sustained attack on Israel.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, still with me, the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the journalist and broadcaster, Daisy McAndrew. Let's start with the Guardian front page, and we read that Rachel Reeves will announce the biggest spending cuts since austerity at next week's spring statement, after ruling out taxes as a way to close the budget deficit. Any surprises there, Kevin?
Kemi Badenoch was today at Prime Minister's question. She was pretty poor, but she did call it an emergency budget, which I thought hit home. And cuts of up to 7% in unprotected departments, which is most of them. That is real deep. That is a return to austerity, however much the government tries to bill it as otherwise. The Financial Times had a nibble at this story today. The Guardian have taken it on. I've heard some departments could get 11% cuts over the period, which you cannot revive public services if you're going to be making cuts.
This is going to be incredibly difficult for a lot of those Labour backbenchers to stomach. They didn't go. It goes against the grain completely, and obviously we've had all the welfare cuts and problems with that, and you can see a lot of the backbenchers particularly, but we know some in the cabinet really struggling, and I think this is very, very difficult. You start talking about austerity, you start talking about being worse than when the Tories were doing it, and you've got a real problem of how Keir Starmer's going to hold his troops together in the face of this. Austerity is a dirty word in the Labour Party ranks.
Kevin, do you think we're going to see any resignations over this? Will it come to that?
Ministers rarely desire. I know Annalise Dodds did over the international development cuts. I mean, there's been question marks over would Ed Miliband, but I think he's so long in the tooth, probably not, because his green energy plan might be cut. But Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, is fighting hard against cuts in the Justice Department, because you're not going to be able to get rid of that court backlog, revive prisons, get probation going properly. If you have cuts like that, you just can't do it. You're going to be managing decline.
Yeah.
So it's you could put up taxes again. You've got the very wealthiest. You could do that, but Reeves is not, and there are question marks now around her. You hear Labour MPs muttering, "Will she survive?"
Yeah.
Haven't heard those mutterings.
Coming out of Westminster.
Take us to the Telegraph, Daisy, and this story about France issuing survival manuals to citizens to prepare them for any invasion or imminent threat.
So this is a fantastic story that the Telegraph have got hold of via a French radio station, who are saying that these leaflets are being prepared and they're going to be distributed with a survival kit of what to do in the face of a big threat. And it's a survival kit saying you need to get things like, tins of food and batteries and torches, and saying that we will be ready in whatever the crisis is, whether it's natural, technological, cyber or security related. Obviously, a lot of people saying this is to do with what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. But then some people are really mocking them for it, saying, we're going to be the best prepared, unlike in Sweden. While you're at it, how about in case of tsunami, tell us to do no snorkeling, is what one commentator has said at the end. So I'm not sure they're taking it as seriously as they're calling it the end of the world for dummies.
Well, is this a joke, Kevin?
In case of nuclear leaks, residents should lock their doors. I don't think radiation knocks on the door or rings the bell to wait to come into your house. It's never operated like that. I think we've seen when weapons have gone off. I mean, this reminds me of the 1980s, and the Thatcher government was widely mocked over protect and survive and how you're supposed to survive a nuclear war in Britain. It was like whitewash your windows and get under your table. No, look, let's try and prevent war. Rather than coping with the impact. Yeah.
Just got time to talk about, a minute in fact, to talk about the story on the front page of the Mirror regarding Matt Hancock. The headline, I do it all again. To what is he referring to?
So Hancock's been talking, as so many, into the COVID inquiry, and seems to have been saying that he would do it all again when it comes to those VIP lanes. Remember, this was the accusation that all the sort of, that the buddies were getting all these amazing contracts, and he was saying, well, we had to have some sort of system, and I'd do it all again. It's quite extraordinary. I was very amused. I was just looking at the Mail, who've done a big thing about the new look Matt Hancock, and I was thinking, what are they on about? Are they on about his haircut? And in fact, I'm very glad that the Mail isn't sexist, because this is something they normally do about women. They're commenting on the fact he's put on weight, but they're calling it his new look. And then they've done pictures of him in the jungle and him today. And I was like, well, at least what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
I think he's always been a fat head. I mean, defending the VIP lane, I'd just say two words, Michelle and Morn. Yeah. No, or then we can go on to his local pub landlord. I mean, look, I think very few other ministers would defend it.
Kevin maybe needs another stint in the jungle to lose some more pounds.
Yes, exactly.
Daisy and Kevin, thank you very much for the moment. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Thursday, the first day of spring, could well turn out to be the warmest day of the year so far before the weather begins to break down on Friday. First thing on Thursday, and it won't be quite as cold as it has been recently. There'll still be a widespread frost across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. But further south, the temperatures should largely stay above freezing. Any mist will clear readily during the morning, and most places will have a fine and sunny day. The temperatures will rise steadily, with the warmest area expected in a zone stretching from South Wales towards London. This is where temperatures are most likely to reach 20 degrees, which would make it the warmest day of the year so far.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.